Today I'm working downstairs in my craft room and I thought I would start a new journal. I was inspired by this bag. It's from a little store called Epiphany in Elora, Ontario. I was also shopping in Paris, Ontario, and found this really nice embroidered cloth. I love putting fabric and paper together. So that's sort of my color scheme I'm going to work with, these sort of orangey gold colors, the beiges, the browns, and see what I can come up with. So that's where I'm starting. And I think I'm just going to go around my art room and collect a variety of things, and then I'll start assembling it and working on the journal cover. When I'm looking for writing paper to add in my journal, I'll sometimes take apart one of these little booklets that I find from a secondhand store for very inexpensive. I just go to the center or try to find a book that's got strings, and you just cut the strings. And you've got a few sheets that can be added to your journal. I'll probably tea or coffee stain these because they're a little bit bright. Once I've got a nice group of papers picked out and some ribbon, then I'll start working on the cover and taking apart the paper bag. When I'm going to glue fabric to a journal, I always use a lightweight interfacing on the underside. I press it on, and this gives the fabric some body, but it also keeps the glue from running through to the other side of the fabric. I like starting a new inspiration journal in January. For the last few years, since I've learned how to make hand-bound journals, I've made it a habit to work on one journal a year. It gives me a sense of accomplishment and nostalgia when I flip through the pages at the end of the year and remember all of the cool things I did, the places I went, art techniques I experimented with, new recipes I tried, quotes that inspired me, Bible verses that encouraged me, new embroidery stitches I practiced, leaves and flower petals I collected and pressed. My journal is my personal space with no rules and no judgment, a place for me to express my wonder and gratitude and creativity. After I've glued everything in place, I like to press my journal covers between two pieces of parchment paper with heavy books laid on top. This keeps the journal from curling up on the edges while the glue dries. The parchment paper keeps the glue from sticking on my table or books. I leave it like this to dry overnight. To coffee dye paper, I mix up a couple of tablespoons of instant coffee in a cup of boiling water and then pour it in a cookie sheet. I add more water, stirring it gently until the cookie sheet has a thin layer of water covering it. When the water has cooled down a bit, I dip the paper in and flip it over carefully so I don't tear the paper. It tears easily when it's wet. I lay it out to dry for a couple of hours on an old shower curtain or bed sheet to protect my table. The next day, when everything is dry, I start laying out my signatures. A signature is a bundle of paper that's folded in the middle and bound into the journal. In this journal, I'll make 3 signatures. So I'm laying out 3 piles of paper. I start with the lined tea-dyed paper. I want 2 in each signature. Then I'm adding 2 sheets of sketch paper in each pile. And now I'm just randomly distributing the specialty papers between each signature. I aim for about 8 pieces of paper in each pile. I try not to go much higher than 10 or 12 pieces for each signature, or they tend to get too bulky. Here I'm using a piece of scrapbook paper, and I'm folding it up from the bottom, and I'm going to be sewing the edges of that to make 2 little pockets. Here I'm folding a paper bag in half, and I'll bind that into the journal, and that'll give me another pocket. Once I have all the signatures together, then I'm ready to start preparing the paper to be bound into the journal.
Okay, the next thing you want to do once you have your signatures all picked out in your cover is you want to take each signature one at a time. And you want to sort them out so that each signature has the pages in the order that you want them in. So I'm probably going to make this my front page, front signature. And then I'm going to put this one in. This is going to have a pocket. I'm going to sew to make a pocket. And then I just want to put a lined paper, then a drawing paper, music sheet, another lined paper, another drawing paper, and I may put this decorative paper in between. Actually, I think I'll put this decorative paper in here. Okay. I just want to do that with each signature. Okay, once you have all your pages in the order that you want them, then it's time to tear off or cut the pages to make them fit into the book. So when I cut cut my pages down to fit in. Every page doesn't have to fit within the cover. Some can stick out. It gives that ragged look. But if you want to, then you can trim it down a little bit. So this one, I'm just going to trim the bottom off to about there. So I have a ruler that I use. You can use the straight edge of a ruler, or here I took, forget what I took, something like a screwdriver or something, and I made notches in this so that it's rough, so that when I lay it down to rip it off, it gives a nice ragged edge. And you get a nice ragged edge like that. I'll take a bit off the top as well. And then I'll take one of my distressed inks. I'm going to use Vintage Photo. Actually, I think I'm going to use this one called Gathered Twigs. It's a nice dark brown. And I use my little tool here. And I'm going to take the edge of this and just add a little bit of ink on the edge to distress the edge, make it look old. Page is good. And I think I'll cut this one down a bit. One signature. And I'll do the same with the next signature. So this page, I'm going to cut off this part. And I'm going to use my orange I think I'm going to put this piece inside like this.
When I'm tearing down the papers, I try to vary the size of each page so the overall edges of the journal have a tattered and kind of disheveled look. It adds so much texture and interest to your journal.
Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I've picked out some lace, a bunch of lace that I'm going to put on the edges, so on the edges of the journal pages. And I'm making some orange pekoe tea, and this is just instant coffee. And I'm going to just put the lace in the coffee and in the tea to dye it. Some of it's kind of white, and I want it to have like a brown or like a beat up kind of a look, distressed kind of a look. So usually I would just do tea or coffee, but because I have oranges and browns in this journal, I thought it would be nice to have the different colors of lace, some different tones. So I'm going to use tea and coffee. I'll just let that sit for a bit and then I'll rinse it out. And after the lace is all dry, I put mine in the dryer for a few minutes just to dry it, and then I'm going to just press it with the iron, and that helps to take the last bit of dampness out and flatten it a bit, and also set the stain. So the first thing I'm going to do is just sew that little piece of fabric down. I'm going to put these on top and just stitch with a zigzag like that, just to reinforce the spine. I like to leave a long tail like that because I like a lot of strings on my journals. And now I'm going to sew across the bottom, and this will form two little pockets at the top. So this one I'm going to sew across the bottom, and that will make a little pocket there and here. This time I'm going to use the straight stitch. Now I'm going to take this piece of lace and sew it over this. like that, and make 2 little tuck spots. And I'll cut this like this, because I only want the strings hanging on the edges, not in the center. One page done. I'll leave those 2 for now. Work on this one. So this one I want to have pockets like that, so I'm going to sew down and down. And I think I'll put some lace across like that ribbon. So when I'm sewing this, I'm just making a wavy line. And I usually go 3 times over. So I got a pocket there and a pocket there. This one, I'll sew some lace on. I think I'm going to use this lace here. Okay, so I found a piece of wallpaper, an old piece of vintage wallpaper that I want to use in the journal. So, but it's very delicate. It was taken off an old house, and I don't want it to rip, so I'm going to line it with this piece of vellum so that it'll stand up in the journal. So I'm just going to go around the outside with a straight stitch. And then I'm going to add this manila envelope into my journal because I found something really special that I'll show you that I want to put in this envelope when I'm embellishing it. So I took out one of the other pages and I'm going to add this into the journal instead. And I'm just going to put a piece of lace on here to decorate the flap. Okay, so when I put my lace on, I try to make sure that I have some height and some variation. So I've got some beige lace here and beige here, some kind of tea stained, coffee stained, and I want the height variation as well. So if I hadn't put that in, it kind of slopes down, so I needed a bit of height at the back. So I put the beige lace in there. And you want to make sure too that when you're putting your lace in, that like every few pages has a piece of lace, so it's spread nicely throughout the book. So there isn't like a big chunk, like a whole signature with no lace and then all the lace at the front of the journal. Just want to spread it out. Okay. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of making a hand-bound inspiration journal. If you join me in my video next week, I'm going to show you how I bind the signatures into the journal, how I make this cool closure and this tassel, and then I'm going to start working on decorating the inside of the journal as well.